It's time for Waking Up with Wesley. Today's forecast and weather-wise discussion with WLOX First Alert Weather's senior meteorologist, Wesley Williams.
Waking Up with Wesley is sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.
All right, good morning everyone, and thank you for waking up with Wesley. I'm Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. As we take a look at what's happening today is a special day in the tropics because it is the peak, the climatological peak of hurricane season. So we are going to take a look at the tropics and see what's out there. But I got to tell you, it's unusually quiet, and that is unlike what we had around 1 year ago at this time. Do y'all remember Francine? This is a look at 1 year ago, September 10th, 2024, and that is satellite imagery of what was then Tropical Storm Francine developing in the Western Gulf near the Mexico coast and just offshore of the Texas coast as well. So Francine was definitely something to pay attention to last year at this time, as it brought local impacts to our part of the coast. This is a look at the track with that storm from last year, Francine, and you can see it took a track up to the north and then hung a right into coastal Louisiana. It made landfall on September 11th, 2024 at 5 p.m. That was very close to Terrebonne Parish, Louisiana, and it was reaching Category 2 intensity right before it made landfall. Apparently the peak intensity with this thing, according to the National Hurricane Center, was with a wind of 105 miles per hour. That puts it right in the Category 2 territory. Unfortunately for Mississippi, we were on the right side of that, and that usually is the impactful side. Anytime you have a hurricane that's making landfall in Louisiana, that means Mississippi is on the right side of that, and so we wind up getting in quite a bit of storm surge with the winds wrapping around the eastern side. We can also get some strong wind. We can also see some pretty heavy rain, and that was the big threat with Francine, was a really heavy rain threat. Mississippi on our coast, we didn't really see too much in the way of wind with this storm, and we didn't have as much storm surge as our neighbors to the west in Louisiana saw. But yeah, the potential for flooding rain that actually caused some of our local rivers to rise, that was our main local concern with that storm on the Mississippi coast, compared to over in Louisiana, where their main concern was actually the wind and the more dangerous storm surge along the coast. So like I said, this is the peak. Here we are today, September 10th. It is on this day, more than any other day, that you are most likely to find tropical activity happening somewhere in the Gulf, somewhere in the Caribbean, somewhere in the Atlantic. But as we look out there, crickets. There's absolutely nothing to see in the tropics on this day. And there are a number of reasons why that is. Some of the air over the Atlantic is very dry, so we don't have as much concentrated thunderstorm activity forming. There's not too many concentrated areas of clouds. There's also a few other reasons. We do have an expansive Bermuda high pressure system that's taking up a lot of the waters of the Atlantic. And locally over the Gulf Coast region, we actually have what some meteorologists call an East Coast trough. What that is, a trough, is just kind of a dip in the jet stream. So the jet stream, this is a look at the jet stream pattern across the country, and you've got a high pressure located out here, the Bermuda High, and the jet stream goes up over a ridge, then down with a trough, and then it comes back up over the Bermuda high pressure ridge. So we can mark some of those features there. There's a Plains Ridge, an East Coast trough, and then a Bermuda high. And all of these winds that are coming down on the around this trough, those are winds that are coming down into the Gulf like this, and they're causing some strong wind shear, some strong winds upstairs in the air. And so that's why you're not going to really find much development in those areas. You can see it here when we plot the wind shear more directly. And just look at these winds coming down around the base of that trough like this. So this pretty much closes the Gulf for tropics. Any system that tries to form in the northern Gulf would likely get ripped apart. If we had a hurricane, for example, trying to come over in this neck of the woods, there would be some really strong winds blowing over the top of the hurricane, and that would likely weaken the system, disrupting its circulation, maybe even making it fall apart. Fortunately, we don't have any hurricanes out there, but even if there were one, the pattern in the Gulf is very hostile for tropical development. So it's not a very favorable place for systems to form, and there's a good deal of wind shear. If you look across much of the Atlantic basin, there's actually a good deal of it. There's interestingly even some wind shear down here along the ITCZ, the Intercontinental Convergence Zone, the place not too far to the north of the equator, where we usually see some tropical waves brewing there, but they're undergoing wind shear. There's drier air in the Atlantic, some drier air in parts of the Caribbean. So just, even though the water temperatures are warm enough, you don't really have enough favorable weather for the tropics. And the Gulf really has not been a place for us to see tropical activity so far this year. Barry, the only named system so far this year, that was a tropical storm that hit Mexico earlier this year. And then out in the Atlantic, we had a number of systems, Aaron being the strongest one, and this year's only hurricane, this year's only major hurricane, Aaron, which made a close call with Puerto Rico, but then turned north and threaded the needle between the East Coast and Bermuda, sparing most land areas from any significant impacts. Now compare that to last year, just in the Gulf alone, there were a number of storms. Francine, we just mentioned, one of those storms that hit Louisiana in September of last year. But there was a storm that hit Texas last July, Hurricane Beryl. And there were 3 hurricanes that hit Florida, Debbie in August, Helene in September, and Milton in October. And then there were 2 tropical storms that hit Mexico, Alberto and Chris. And then there was this other storm late in the year, Rafael, which was a hurricane in the middle of the Gulf, but it actually never made landfall. It fell apart over the open Gulf waters. It gave us a late season scare though, but fortunately it never made it here to the Gulf Coast. This is a look at last year's hurricane season, and just look at how busy September was. Last September, there was Francine, Gordon, Helene, Isaac, Joyce, and Kirk. Those were 6 storms that formed last September, compared to this September where no storms have formed. And even if you're more specific with the nuance of it, today is September 10th. If you look back at this, only Francine had formed as of September 10th. You'd have to wait until September 11th for Gordon to form elsewhere. But even though this just goes to show you though, there's a lot of September left. And even though the National Hurricane Center indicating maybe we don't see anything for the next 7 days, that gets us to September 17th. So look at what happened after September 17th of last year. 1, 2, 3, 4 storms. 3 of them were hurricanes. 2 of them were major hurricanes. 1 of them hit Florida. So, you know, the second half of September, okay, it's not the peak of hurricane season, but you can still have a major hurricane hit the Gulf Coast. That's what happened last year. Helene did. So it's important not to let our guards down, even though we have noticed lower activity. For now, that could change. There still is the entire rest of September, the entire month of October. And so sometimes, like you saw last year with Rafael in November, sometimes storms can form in November. So we still have an entire 12 weeks until the official end of hurricane season, which happens on November 30th. So we're going to keep watching the tropics, but at least for now, it does look like kind of a good sign as far as our stats are concerned. That's a look at some of the stats there. But hurricane season by the numbers, basically. So the forecast calling for 13 to 18 named storms. We've seen 6 so far in the Gulf, Caribbean, and Atlantic. So that means there's at least 7 more between now and November 30th, with there being, 6 so far this year. It was the same number last year too. But this is a difference, right? Last year there were 4 hurricanes, Francine being one of them. Francine turned into a hurricane on September 10th of last year. So 4 hurricanes last year through September 10th, but only one Hurricane Aaron this year through September 10th. Normally you have 3 hurricanes through September 10th. So right now we're running behind normal. And as far as majors are concerned, that's actually normal. Last year there was 1, this year there's 1, and normally there's 1 through September 10th, even though the forecast calls for us to have 2 more majors between now and November 30th. So a lot of numbers to follow there in the tropics for hurricane season 2025, but at least right now it is looking pretty good with dry conditions. And we don't want it to turn too dry. You know, hurricanes are actually one of the normal ways that the Gulf Coast region gets rain. I know we don't want the wind, but those storms do tend to bring beneficial rains. You know, this part of the country is, you know, it has a subtropical climate, right? So we rely on tropical systems for rain in this part of the country. When we don't get rain from those tropical systems, sometimes drought conditions can begin to develop. And we have noticed over the last month, drought conditions have begun to develop over parts of South Mississippi. Right now that's showing up in Pearl River, Stone, and George counties, but this map is going to get this map is updated once per week, and the next update comes out tomorrow by noon. So by Thursday by noon, we will have the new update that takes into account the last week of weather, and it's probably going to show that yellow area, the stage 1 drought, is probably going to expand to include a larger surface area. So we're going to probably see this drought worsen when we get the new information tomorrow. And with us having another stretch of 7 days of hardly any rain, the drought might worsen and increase in intensity when we get the next update a week from tomorrow, after we will have gone through basically an entire week of no rain. So let's take you into some of the details of today's weather. We've had some sunshine. The dew point numbers did fall off a little bit this morning compared to yesterday. There's a look at those numbers. You see them mostly in the 60s. But if we take a look at the change, we're noticing some of the dew point numbers have come down, right? So it's not as muggy as it was yesterday morning. And when you look at the trends here, it's easy to pick out where things are drying, where things are turning muggier. You have it turning muggier all across much of Louisiana, Arkansas, but you do have things turning drier. It's sneaking in from the north and east across parts of Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. So that's what we're noticing here. There is an area of high pressure that's situated about like this, and that clockwise circulation around that high pressure system is what is helping us to get that wind coming in from the east and northeast, helping to pull the drier air in. And also on the western side of it, if you're over here in Shreveport, you got that wind coming in from the south around the clockwise circulation of that high, so it's pulling in muggier air for them. If we take a look at the rain over the next 7 days, we're just going to let this play out, but notice where it says Gulfport, you're not going to see much rain as we go into Wednesday, as we go into Thursday, Friday, the weekend. Most of the rain is going to stay offshore near a stalled front. So we will have a long stretch of hardly any rain as we go into the next 7 days. That's why I think the drought conditions might wind up worsening for our local area. As the high pressure moves in, we're looking at an overall drier pattern for the next 7 to 10 days, and the air turns slightly less humid than it was yesterday. With the air being slightly less humid, that means there's less moisture in the air. And when the air is a little bit drier, it tends to heat up a little bit more in the afternoon. It tends to cool off a little bit more in the morning. So that's why when you take a look at the next 4 days, you're looking at high temperatures getting just a little bit hotter. We're going to see highs rising from today, like a 88 in Ocean Springs, for example, to Friday. We might have a 92 in Ocean Springs. For today, we might have a 91 in Perkinston, but by Friday, we might have a 94 in Perkinston. So both on the coast and inland, we are going to notice the afternoons getting a little bit hotter. But because it's not as humid, maybe that heat will be tolerable. Also, like I said, the mornings might get slightly cooler too. You can see these numbers are showing fewer 70s. Today, or rather tomorrow morning, we're expecting mid to upper 60s. And you'll notice each morning here, basically mid to upper 60s each morning. So pretty nice in the mornings, even though the afternoons will be hot. We are really just looking at picture perfect conditions, beautiful, gorgeous, picturesque, postcard perfect, nice looking, pretty. I had to kind of pull out all of the little weather words because there's not too much happening weather-wise here with dry weather and mostly sunny skies each day and hardly any rain. But as you can see, that 7-day stretch of little to no rain, by the time we get to next Thursday's drought monitor, as it's going to likely show this information in it by then, I do think that the drought will increase for the local area. So your lawns are going to get crispier, maybe even crunchier in some cases. Maybe you got to take out the hose, water the lawn, etc. Your gardens as well, because the Mother Nature won't really be helping us out very much in regards to getting rained on for the next 7 days at least, if not even more than that. Well, that'll pretty much do it for today's edition of Waking Up with Wesley. I've been Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. I hope that you have a great day, and we'll see you again next time. Till then, take care.
Waking Up with Wesley has been sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.